Of the oppressed in our world, she is the most oppressed. She is poverty's woman. She represents half the world's population. Often she is the sole provider for her family. She works 2/3 of the world's working hours and receives 1/10 of the world's income. She is the world's invisible workforce, planting and cultivating, harvesting by hand, pounding by the hour. She is the world's universal water carrier, and in many countries, the common beast of burden. At 35, she will look more like 55. Compared to a man, she is the one more likely to be poor, hungry, sick, illiterate, mistreated. She will sacrifice her life for the future of her children. She is Maria, Eumenicore, Fatima, Modesta. She is poverty's woman. Perhaps the heaviest burden a poor woman must carry is one imposed by tradition and poverty. It has to do with just being a girl. In most developing countries, the birth of a boy is announced by music and singing. When a daughter is born, there is silence, almost disappointment. In countries where hunger is a constant enemy, a boy represents income and provision for his family, as well as security for his parents. Partly because of this, in many countries, a baby girl will be nursed for a shorter period than her brothers. She will receive less nutritious food and probably less attention. Many times, when a girl becomes an adolescent, she will be a financial burden and often will be married at the age of 12 or 13. The inevitable result is she'll have babies too soon and too often, and many of her babies will die. Her girls will be deprived of an education, stifled in spirit, will also marry very young and have more daughters. So the cycle continues. The stories you are about to see are true. They are the very personal stories of 5 courageous women. Each will speak for millions of others in Asia, Africa, and Latin America. Women who live in a world where love and hope and laughter must try to survive untold hardship, disease, even death. These women will speak for the forgotten half of a suffering world. Each represents a part of the vicious life cycle of poverty's woman. For Rahima, this is the day every girl dreams about, her wedding day. According to custom, Rahima and her husband Akwa have just said their vows separately in different rooms. Now the celebration begins, because now they are brought together and traditionally they are not supposed to look at one another. The relatives are on hand with the customary mirrors, teasingly asking them whom they see. It's their first look as man and wife. Right now, nothing could dim Rahima's hopes for the future. Nothing, that is, except reality. And reality comes the very next day. Rahima is 15 years old, a very common age for marriage in her culture. She has no skill, no education, and will live with 9 other people in this house in the slums of Dhaka, Bangladesh. Up to 40% of third world women are married before the age of 20. Because many families push their daughters into an early marriage, they do not invest money in educating and training daughters for jobs. As a result, 2 out of every 3 illiterate people in the world are women. In Africa, only half of the continent's girls attend primary school, and only a quarter make it to high school. Because girls marry young, they are forced to have children at an early age. Lobakon lives in a small village in northern Kenya. Her baby is due in 2 weeks. She's given birth to 2 children, and she's had to watch one of those children die.
For a week, my baby stayed between life and death. Finally, she could not breathe. I cried in my heart, but death was too strong.
Lobakon knows that the chance of her future baby surviving is very slim, even though she's 8 months pregnant. She's had no medical or health care during her pregnancy. By 11 o'clock, she's already put in 5 hours of hoeing in the field, and then she must carry water from the riverbed well a mile away. Then make the 2 to 3 hour trek out into the bush and carry back a heavy load of firewood. Then comes the grinding, cooking and washing, all by hand. Lobakon will work right up to the hour of giving birth. Most of the women here suffer from malnutrition and suffer hemorrhaging after birth, and see so many of their children die. Lobakon is afraid for her baby.
I don't want this baby to die, but I will not know if it is strong until the day it is born.
Third world women have up to 3 times more children than Western women. In developing countries, 2/3 of all pregnant women are anemic. In the rural areas, only about 15% of the population has access to modern health care. During pregnancy and childbirth, more than half of the world's women receive no medical care whatsoever. While they are pregnant, third world women still work very hard. They often work 12 to 16 hours a day. Overwork, combined with malnutrition among pregnant mothers, causes a high death rate of babies. It is also common for mothers to lose 2 or 3 of their children. At 23 years, Agatha from Honduras has known so much pain. A little over 2 months ago, she went through the most heartbreaking experience any mother can endure. She buried her child. The little girl, only 2 years old, had died of measles.
My little girl was sick with fever for nearly a month. I took her to a local doctor that he could not help. One night, while I was holding her, lying in my arms, she died. There was nothing I could do. I knew she was going to die. I felt so alone. I felt like I would die.
Agatha is pregnant again. She prays that this child will be born healthy because she knows there is little hope once the child is sick. All Agatha has now is her daughter, Ada Luce, already showing signs of malnutrition. One must learn to live with death. Each year, third world mothers watch 5 million of their children die from malnutrition and disease. Many women have to face the death of their child alone because they have been deserted by the husband. This tragedy creates an ongoing cycle of pain. Wilma Santos Cavara is from Honduras. She's 34 years old with 5 children and another on the way. Wilma's husband had left her a few months ago, and now she depends on this ancient borrowed iron to keep her family alive. As soon as the sun is up, she begins to search for work. The washing is much more difficult these days with a baby due, but without work, there is no food. You only have to look at Wilma once to see that a hard life has taken its toll. But her real story is deep inside.
Recently, my husband abandoned me. I will always be alone with no one to help me.
Why do the men leave? With few skills, men find themselves trapped. Many go to live with a younger woman who is usually in her teens. Some try to provide for both families, but more often than not, the first wife is left destitute. For Wilma, that means hunger and sickness for the children. It means she will continue to suffer from parasites because she can't afford to go back to the doctor. It means working over a borrowed iron and trying to forget the hurt and loneliness. Households headed by women are increasing. In Kenya, over 500,000 rural families directly depend on the earnings of women. In Botswana, 1/3 of all households have a woman as their head. The reason for this increase is due to death of husbands, desertion, or men moving to the cities to find jobs and leaving women to support their children in rural areas. This increased responsibility has not been matched with legal rights. Many girls can be married without their consent and easily divorced by their husbands. When a man deserts his wife, he has no legal obligation to pay maintenance. Women are forced to work so their children can survive. This means they are easily exploited. This is Kohija Bibi. She earns her living in the streets of Dhaka, Bangladesh, breaking bricks into gravel. She has no one to care for her children, so they stay with her from the morning until night. One child is left with a neighbor because he is too weak to be taken out of the house. His chances for survival are very slim. In the afternoon, Kohija goes home to a one-room shack that she put together herself. On this particular day, we asked her why she came to Dhaka.
When my husband went to work in Dhaka, I was happy. He would soon be sending money home. But in 6 months, I'd received nothing. I was so worried. I took my children and came to the city. I found out from relatives that he had married another woman. I went to his house and begged him to accept me. He told me to go away. He did not want to see me again. I had to stand at her. Without the money from breaking bricks, we would starve.
With no skills and no education, Kohija has only her bare hands and her perseverance to keep herself and her children alive. At the very young age of 28, poverty and injustice have already sentenced Kohija to a rock pile and a one-room shack for the rest of her life. Women in countries like Bangladesh cannot own land without their husband's consent. Nor can they sign contracts or set up in business. Equal pay for equal work just does not exist. And in most rural areas, a wife's earnings is paid only to the husband. The lack of labor laws encourages the economic exploitation of women. The life of suffering for poverty's woman begins at birth. She marries young, sees her children die, is abandoned by her husband, exploited, has more daughters. The cycle is merciless. Of course, the cycle can be broken, but it should not be broken by carelessly shattering cultural patterns or by imposing inappropriate Western solutions. Today, World Vision aims at having development programs which are planned, carried out, and evaluated by the poor themselves. While their dignity is respected, it means that this kind of development has a chance of benefiting the whole community for a long time. It also means that a small amount of money can make a big difference. Experience has taught us at World Vision that there are two ways of helping third world women. One way is through providing basic services such as nutrition programs, health care, clean water and irrigation, and agricultural training. The other and more important way we can help suffering women is to increase their choices so that they are not limited in the vicious cycle of poverty. This can be done by teaching women how to read and write, family planning, new ways of earning a living, and encouraging women to tackle problems as a united group and seeking legal rights. During the last 100 years, the role of women has changed in many Western nations, including Australia. While there are still areas of exploitation, women today are asserting their rights as persons. They are striving for new opportunities for self-expression. Poverty's woman has a long way to go before this will be possible for her. But if she is to have any hope for the future, we must get involved. Now is the time for us to join in partnership with our suffering sisters to help them declare, "I will not be poverty's woman."